Fullmetal here.
angelrin89.
With another topic of the week. And this time I'm going to be doing the part 2 of character deaths. So I thought, you know what? There's a lot to talk about with this. So we're probably going to need 2 people to tackle this topic because it's kind of a big topic.
The true story is actually I begged him to come on.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to make it sound a little more dignified.
I have no dignity, so...
Okay, so this topic was submitted by Tumblr Anon, and their topic is good character deaths versus bad character deaths. From any show and genre and form of media, whether it's video games or TV or movies or literature, whether horror or action or drama or sci-fi or fantasy, etc. What stands out is examples of how to do it right and when it's done wrong. When something is done for shock value or when it has a purpose. When someone was genuinely hinted at being doomed, or when you get slapped in the face and the story claimed it was planned from the start, but really it was so vague that the writers clearly weren't bothering to put in better effort to be subtle about the foreshadowing. Good subversive character deaths versus the lazy ones done for the sake to be subversive. Good examples of cannon fodder versus bad examples. Respectful and natural conclusions to a character's arc versus a really bad one. And they obviously didn't think of anything better. Good examples of how to write a character out of a show with death versus the lazy ways to write a character out of a show with death. I know you are particular with death, and while some deaths I disagree with are bad writing, for the most part I tend to agree with you 80% of the time that they're badly written deaths. Plus I'd love to hear examples of good written character deaths too from you. Okay, so yeah, that was the topic.
It's a long one.
You see why I was doing the short one last week. So first off, we're going to talk about this. Let's talk about some of the cannon fodder. Because we were actually kind of sitting here talking about trying to figure out...
It was hard to think about. Because my brain kept thinking when I thought of cannon fodder, I'm like, red shirts from Star Trek? And I'm like, no, there's better examples.
That's too easy.
Like, there's better examples than that. That's the simplest solution.
Yeah. So we figured out, there's actually some good examples, and we have some bad examples too. To go back to what I said about Attack on Titan, I mentioned characters like Marco, and did I mention Franz?
You did mention Franz.
Yeah, so those are characters that died very early on in Attack on Titan.
I actually cried when Franz died, and I didn't even know Franz, but it's just the reaction to the fiance trying to perform CPR.
But he's like dead already.
Well, even though it doesn't show it in the anime, I don't know if it showed it in the manga. It probably did because the manga's even more gruesome. But it's like she's performing CPR on a person who's only torso on up.
Yeah,
he's dead.
Waist down, he's was gone. It's and so she's trying to save him, and I think Eren was just like, he's gone. Armin. He's like, he's gone. And she's like, no, and I'm just like.
Because that was when Armin was shell-shocked because of Eren gave his life to protect him.
Right, you see, and that's the reasons why those are good, because that really sets the stage. You want to set the stage as, okay, the Titans are a dangerous threat. So you have these characters that we've known for the first couple of episodes. And it's actually much better.
And it sets you up of these kids, even though they're optimistic that they think they're going to take the world, they're a little in over their heads.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it felt like it could have got, I think it did go too far, but I think that it's really worse when you look at this in hindsight, because when you if you're first reading the manga, or you're first watching the show.
Trost arc is legit good.
Yeah, I actually did an entire topic talking about why the Trost arc was the only good arc in the series. But when these characters die, it actually felt like, some of the cannon fodder deaths, yeah, it's sad. Mina dying was sad. And I do think that in some ways that it did kind of focus a little bit on, oh, look how gory they died. But that's Isayama and his gore fetish. But I feel like, but at the very least, them dying, it felt like it meant something. And even, because I remember in the Trost arc, that one guy who sacrificed himself, who was the leader of that one troop. Yes. And the one who was doubting Eren, and when Eren was trying to plug the hole, he died in that fight. But it's okay.
Because it shows that he was starting to have faith in Eren and this plan.
So, but when those people died, they plugged the hole. It felt like it accomplished something.
This wasn't all meaningless. Yeah. These kids didn't die for nothing at the very least.
Yeah, they did fight, and especially once Eren in his Titan form came in, it felt like there is some hope. Yeah. And it felt like it was structured that way. Things go bad.
That's why it went off the rails after that. Because if I didn't feel, you don't feel that hope. It just feels like nothing but constant. Yeah. Just ugh.
Yeah, and then when you see, and I mentioned before that the bad deaths was when Squad Levi died.
Bad cannon fodder.
That was a bad
cannon fodder.
Yeah, and then it really once that moment hit, I realized anyone that is outside of a select group of characters, like Levi, Aaron, Mikasa, and maybe a few others, everyone else is cannon fodder. And they will die, and then that's when I talked about it, that the series became a revolving door, because as I was trying to read the manga, I just like, okay, here are all these new characters.
There's
and
really
then,
no stakes.
No, it's like, and then they're all going to die a few chapters later, and it's like, okay, well, why should I care?
But anyone can die, the stakes are high. No, see, if anyone can die, then my stakes in this show are gone.
Yeah.
I have no stake in this.
Right, and it's something that Linkar talked about in Ultimatum, I believe. Is that when they were constantly slaughtering all these characters, is he made the point that when you're killing off all these characters with reckless abandon, just over and over and over and over again, you're telling your audience, don't be invested. Don't care.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Because
you like this character? Who cares? You like that character? Who cares?
Yeah, because they're just going to be dying.
It's just meaningless.
Yeah, because it's something that a lot of writers don't understand. The characters are what people get attached to. There's some plot lines, okay, people get attached to plot lines and stuff, but generally, what people still stick around for are characters. That's why you see some people still stick to Attack on Titan because of the characters. Some people still stick with Ruby because they love the characters. And it's like, yes, that's important. So when
you can have a dark show, but, like, don't kill investment, like, Castlevania right now on Netflix is amazing, and it is really gory, just like Attack on Titan. And yet, the only thing that's dying are innocent people and monsters along all the wayside.
Yeah.
The important characters are important.
Yeah, it's not like they killed off Sypha for no reason. It's
They're just like, woo!
No, and it's like, yeah, and it understands, these are not characters that you just kill off. And that's why with Attack on, like, I think there's like a limit that
well, like the death of Lisa and the death of Dracula.
Oh.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
Like, but if you played Castlevania, that's not a spoiler. Dracula dies in like every game. But it's like it's treated with so much importance.
Yeah, it really means something. And when Lisa dies,
and Lisa, you only known her for like literally 2 minutes. Like that is legit cannon fodder right there.
Yes, but you get attached to her, and then her death. Her death was
it kickstarted the whole plot.
Yeah, and then when Dracula dies, it's something that they dedicated at least half of an episode just to the fight with Dracula.
Just so like when Dracula dies, and it's not what I expected. I did not expect it to be so emotional.
Yeah, I was expecting the big, gigantic, bombastic fight.
Like in every video game you ever do, but no, it's emotional because then you remember, oh right, Alucard has to kill his father.
Yeah.
The father that raised him.
Right.
And I'm like, and the show realized that no, this should be extremely emotional, and it was.
Yeah. So it gave that whole death scene. The death scene in and of itself lasted like 5 whole minutes.
It was incredible.
Because the build up. Because Dracula stops fighting, realizes I'm just about to kill my own son.
My flesh and my blood.
My wife's son. The last thing that Lisa actually gave to me. It's like and then that was
like the last part of her that's actually still alive.
Yeah, and that was the part where he basically lets Alucard kill him.
Well, it's as Alucard said, this has been nothing but history's longest suicide note. It's like you died, you died when she died.
Right, and that's another thing talking about building up the death. You have 2 whole seasons just dedicated to building up to Dracula's death. Because you know what's going to happen. Even if you're not a fan of Castlevania, you know that this is setting up, okay, Dracula is the big bad, you're going to go after him. So it's like, yeah, and when he died, they gave it far more gravitas than I thought they were going to give it. And
it was incredible. And the whole thing is, the whole time, it's dark. There is death. There is destruction. There is fire. There is blood. There is gore. And yet, somehow both of us still love this.
Yeah, both of us are generally pretty averse to that. I mean, I can handle some gore and stuff, but like, sometimes it just feels like, ugh.
And you want to know why? Because it is very, very well written.
That's the point, is that you can have this stuff. There's heavy swearing, there's heavy like blood and gore in that, but it's like, that doesn't really bother me because it feels, okay, no, this is simply written. Yeah, what would these people be saying? Yeah, people would cuss. There were these demons, of course they rip people in half. They're just demons and monsters.
They're disgusting, cruel, evil things, so of course they would do that. And even some of their victims are disgusting and cruel, so it's almost like karma in a way.
Yeah. So it's like, in the way they handle death in Castlevania, it works. And even subversive, like, I would have to say that the way they handled Dracula's death was subversion.
I was not expecting that. In fact, I was even expecting Trevor to be the one to, like, kill him.
Because it's always been the Belmonts.
The Belmonts. Now, that's not to say that Dracula's he's probably still going to come back in season 3, because that's what always happens in the games. And then Trevor
Right, because they're covering the, what's it called?
The Curse of Darkness.
Yes.
But... I could see what they were going for. They were going for more Symphony of the Night references, because that is the most popular Castlevania game. So they were trying into the more, because that's what Dracula's character design and Alucard's character design, that's what they're based on in Castlevania, the Netflix show, despite taking place during Castlevania 3.
Yeah. So,
but even though it wasn't what I expected, I'm okay with that. Sometimes it's okay to subvert your expectations.
And this is the thing. If you're subverting the expectations for a good reason, it's subverting the expectations of how Dracula would die by, instead of...
A good plot twist.
Yeah. By providing us, instead of a big fight where Trevor, kills Dracula...
Like just, just like a video game where boom, 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 he's down in like 20 hits.
Yeah, and then no, it's, okay, we're going to take this and take a step back from the action to realize Dracula is still deep down, he still has those feelings and emotions.
Well, and story-wise, who narratively would be the most gut punch reaction to give to the audience? Alucard, his son.
Right.
Like, so if Alucard's the one to kill his father, that's what's gonna, narratively, it makes the most sense. Because that's why Alucard was recruiting these people to start. This is Alucard's crusade. Yes, the show starts off with Trevor, but like Trevor originally didn't want any part of this, but he joined along because he knew that no, I need to do this. And that's not to say that Trevor's still not the main character. It's just like this was more personal to Alucard. So narratively, it would feel a little bit wrong if Alucard wasn't the one to do it. And suddenly I look back and I'm like, you know what? No, that's right. Because this was far more personal to Alucard than this was to Trevor or Sypha.
Right, because even then Alucard had said to his father, I still grieve the same as you, but what you're doing
I can't let you do this. And
right.
I'm just like, and that's how the show started in the very first episode when you get a brief glimpse of Alucard. That he immediately states his mission. I agree with you, but I won't let you commit genocide. And then when he returns at the end of season 2, he's like, I still agree with you, but I will not let you commit genocide.
Right. And even then, after, they have a whole episode after that where you see, like, after everything stops, you see Alucard is just, it hits him. And that he starts seeing a shadow of his father.
And his mother.
And his mother. And it's like, and then all of a sudden he just breaks down.
And he's allowed to mourn them.
Yeah.
And like that's good. Showing also how death affects a character.
Right. It means something. That's the problem with a lot of these deaths is they just don't mean something. And talking about other cannon fodder deaths that people care about, you have, and Star Wars does a couple of good examples. You have the Jedi in Revenge of the Sith, and even the Clone Troopers in the Clone Wars
TV show.
Yeah. Because we get to know these we see these Jedi over the course of the prequels. And some of them we get to know better than others. Some of them got spin-off comics and books and stuff.
Well, and then if, like, granted, it didn't exist back then, but you have the Clone Wars TV show later on. Like, so say somebody, like, now is getting into the Clone Wars TV show, and then they decide to rewatch the prequels. Suddenly, you're going to get more attached to those Jedi. And even some of those clones, like, whenever you see those clones, like, just in battle, at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, and some of them die, and then you're going to remember, they're actually all individuals. They're just not nameless faces like stormtroopers.
Yeah, and it was one thing that when you get attached to a clone in the show, and then they die either that episode, like a lot of times you'll have a character that you get to know, and then they die within an episode. But it says it's effective because that was one of the big themes about the show is that it's war. And it handles that better than Attack on Titan, because a lot of people would say, Attack on Titan, well, everyone dies because it's war. I'm like, okay, yes, but still, it's a story.
And here's the funny thing. Star Wars The Clone Wars is a kid's show.
It's supposed to be a kid's show. And it's like, and then all these other series that are supposed to be for more older audiences
Granted, it's a more mature kid's show, mind you, because it's dealing with, an intergalactic civil war, but a kid's show nonetheless.
So when Attack on Titan, which is very explicitly meant to cater to an older audience, is far more immature with this. And that's something that I have noticed is that you have kids shows, like in Avatar The Last Airbender, a kids show, when characters died, it's handled far more maturely.
Well, like Yue's death.
Yeah, Yue's death. Even when you flash back to Roku's death, and you find the tragedy that his best friend Sozin left him to die so that he could go and commit genocide. It's like you have all these serious stuff, and it's kid show. It's kid shows. And that's the thing, is that the writers who are writing, it's not because it's a kid show. It's not because something's an adult show. It's because the writers themselves know what to do.
They respect.
Yeah.
They respect their audience, and they respect their characters.
Yeah. And another talking about when writing is on the wall, you know the Jedi are going to die by the end of episode 3. Because that was set up in episode 4. It was like Obi-Wan talks about how the Jedi had fallen, and that it was the dark times from the Empire. So it's like, oh,
so you knew they were doomed.
Yeah. So, but then...
So you're prepared for it.
Yeah. So you have, even if you get attached to them, you're emotionally prepared, because it's like, it's still sad, because sometimes when I'm watching Revenge of the Sith, sometimes I'll just fast forward.
I mean, it's still sad, because especially after watching Star Wars The Clone Wars, and I'm just like, oh, Ayla, oh, Plo Koon, oh, Kiel Mundi, and I'm just like, oh.
I really liked Plo Koon in his
episode.
Like,
oh, Kit Fisto, and I'm just like, no. And it's just like, so, and like, it becomes even sadder in hindsight, because I did get to know them even more in depth, and I'm just like, oh, man. But they couldn't live. Like, it's like, we have the original trilogy. We knew they were going to be doomed anyway.
And at best, there would only be a handful of survivors. Most of them had to die in order to fit into the story. It's like, that's the way that episode 4 starts. The Jedi were killed off decades ago. And then Luke is the big return of the Jedi. That's what they call it. The return of the Jedi. So, but yeah, I mean, it's handled in a way that it makes sense. It's sad, but it's sad. It's not something that I go, oh, that's stupid. Why did they do that? It doesn't make any sense, because
no, it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And here, this is what I'm going to let you handle for.
Oh wait, but first, didn't you want to talk about the Spartans?
Oh yes, I almost forgot, because they have a whole list of this. So another canon fodder deaths that I wanted to talk about is in the Halo, the Bungie era of Halo. Was the Spartan 3.
The good one.
Yeah, the good one. Is the Spartan 3s. Spartan 3s are introduced properly in the Ghosts of Onyx book, and you find out that they were basically meant to be like the Spartan 2s, but where Dr. Halsey made the Spartan 2s to be to protect them as much as she could so that they could survive as best.
Didn't you say it's kind of a lot like the Clone Troopers, where
yes.
they are bred for this?
Yeah, they're bred for war, but it's far more applicable to the Spartan 3s because Oni in basically the secret spy organization for the UNSC in Halo. They took a lot of the work that Dr. Halsey did, and they were like, okay, let's mass produce it. And that was the character, Colonel Ackerson was behind it. So let's mass produce them. They can be pretty similar in terms of power, but we'll give them cheap armor, cheap weapons, and send them out by the hundreds to die. So they had like a 99% fatality rating, with very few managing to survive. But that was the point. They would go out and they would just have these incredible victories, but at the cost of like 300 Spartans. But that wasn't the point. It says they were meant to die. They were a lot like the clone troopers in that they were they're not clones or anything, but
they were literally bred for this.
Yeah, they were kids who were taken and brainwashed and sent out sometimes as young as 12 years old to die because they didn't care. Paragonsky didn't care. So all the people in charge didn't care as long as they could beat the Covenant and they could fight and win the war that they were very badly losing. And it says
the ends justify the means.
Yeah, and it's all set up within the story, and you do feel for them. Even the ones that you get to know that die, it makes sense because you understand the whole point of this is that yes, and even then you actually do get another character who does want to save the Spartan 3s, who does want the best for them, and he does try to prepare them as best as he can, only for them to still die by the hundreds. And and you'll like you don't know all the stuff in the expanded universe.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, she's getting there, but it's something that works in the story, and it makes you feel the emotions that the Eric Nyland was trying to make you feel. You feel bad for him. You feel sympathy for these kids that are being brainwashed and sent out to die, and just it's sad. But it's sad in a way that's not like, oh, I'm really upset that they just killed off this character. It's okay, no.
Empathy. You have empathy.
That's the word I was looking for. You have empathy for their deaths and empathy for their situations. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Nylon trilogy so much of Halo. It's like, that's why they're the core of the Halo expanded universe, just because you have so much of that, great writing in it. So even when these characters die, it's like, okay, but it's still a good story. And you feel the sadness that they died, but you understand why it happened, and it works within the story. Because the Human Covenant War, it's not really shown as much in the games, but like, humans were losing really badly. And it's like, so they were getting desperate, and it's all part of the story, and you get to see just how dark, the organization ONI could be. So yeah, I mean, that's
it just occurred to me, arguably, wouldn't Rogue One be considered cannon fodder?
Yes! Because ultimately their footnote, the Rogue One team is a footnote in history. And that's actually
But what they've done had a huge domino effect on the Star Wars original trilogy as a whole.
Right. And even though you get attached to all those characters and you love all of the characters in Rogue One.
Like Bodhi, K2,
Cassian,
Jin,
Chirrut, and Baz. Like you like these characters.
They're all good. And then and even some of the other little foot soldiers, I kind of started to know. I'm like, I know you don't have a name, but I don't know, seeing them working side by side together.
And when they're first when Cassian organizes them, and he points out that a lot of these guys have done some of the skeevy underbelly stuff. Some of them have done assassinations. Some of them have done really dark spy stuff for the Empire, or not the Empire, but the rebellion against the Empire. But
they do it because it's a cause they believe in.
Right, and they are willing to go as far as they have to in order to fight the Empire.
So that way the next generation won't have to fight this war. They can be free.
Right, and that's why when they all get together, and then pretty much all of them die on the ground at Scarif, because it's like, they're cannon fodder. They don't even need names because you already feel for them. And that's one of the reasons why I liked Rogue One.
Their sacrifices mean something. Because, granted, it's another hindsight good thing of prequels. Because these deaths aren't going to be in vain. That's why the prequel trilogy's fine. Because if it's yes, it's sad all these Jedi die. It's sad that all the tragedy of the clones. But the original trilogy. It's all not going to be in vain in the end.
That's why it ends with, Luke being given to Owen and Beru, and it's Obi-Wan watching over him. It's it's leading into the New Hope.
Yeah, and that's why Rogue One, oh man, I wish I could erase Rogue One from my memory, and then watch it for the first time all over again, because the chills I got when watching it, it made me, after certain other Disney Star Wars movies killed any investment I had for Star Wars, is watching Rogue One reminds me why I still love this franchise. And granted, so does watching the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy and Star Wars, the Clone Wars TV series. But it's just, it's just after a while when you have so much disappointment, it's so easy to get jaded. And after The Force Awakens, I got pretty dang jaded.
Yeah.
And then I watched Rogue One, and then it reminded me, no, you still love Star Wars. Just because there's bad movies that are coming out recently, you still are a fan.
Right.
And it reminded me why I love this series so much, because of what it means. And Rogue One did that for me, despite the fact that so many people kept dying. It's because of why they were all fighting. They were fighting for hope. They were fighting for a better tomorrow. And they kept, as Jin said, we will take the next chance, and then the next, and then the next, until either we won or all the chances are spent.
Yeah.
And the whole movie, that was pretty much that whole movie. And as soon as the plans got to Leia, you knew, okay, it meant something. It meant something. Their deaths, all of them, it meant something.
And so when Jin and Cassian die from the explosion from the Death Star shooting at Scarif, it's and that's when they were saying is, do you think anyone's still out there listening?
And listening, and it's just yes, because Leia's gonna get those plans, and then those plans are gonna find their way to the rebellion, and then Luke's gonna destroy the Death Star, and then all those deaths will not be in vain because of they died for the greater good. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but they really did.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it works so well. And even though it's like, I mean, obviously, I'm very particular with character deaths, but I'm fine with all the deaths in Rogue One because even though I really love those characters, they were very well handled. And especially like when Chirrut dies from the explosion.
Well, originally the ending was going to be different. Like, I know at the very least, I think Jyn and Cassian were to survive. And they felt that...
Because that was an alternate ending they had prepared in case...
Yeah, in case, like, they didn't like one of the endings. And test audience preferred the darker ending. Because of it had a bigger impact. Just to knowing that these two died so that way. Like, they died so that these plans could get into Princess Leia's hands.
Yeah.
Like that has so much more meaning. Plus, then it'd be like, well, where are these two in the original trilogy? Why aren't they helping Luke and Leia?
Yeah, they're heroes of the rebellion.
Like, wouldn't they be given the highest of standing ovation?
Yeah, like, oh, no.
No.
They would be, but they're dead.
But they're dead.
Well, and yeah, that's a good way because technically the whole main cast were cannon fodder. They were literally a single line from the original trilogies.
Just a paragraph in A New Hope.
Right. It was the rebel spies had gotten the plans of the Death Star.
And yet, from that paragraph, who knew that you could have people that you would end up really caring about? People that, if they were in the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, would just be people that just die on the wayside that wouldn't have even names.
Yeah, they're not Jedi. They're not the most important people in the rebellion.
They're no Han Solo.
No, and that's the most amazing thing about this is that, wow, no, you have these characters who are essentially just cannon fodder. Characters who would be side characters at best, but they're the main characters here.
But they all had past. They had sorrows. They had hardships. They had jokes. They had quips. They were sarcastic.
They had character arcs.
Like some of them were like each of them had different personalities and fought, but for different reasons, but came together.
Yeah.
Heck, they even made technically robots can't die; they just get powered down. But yet somehow they made a death of a robot sad because you got attached to K2,
well,
and you knew that there's no way that K2 would ever be repaired. Right,
because he died in the Empire, and then Scarif blew up.
Just kaboom.
Yeah. So.
And it's just like that's permanent. Like, there's no way that's ever coming back.
Yeah, and it really makes you feel it. It's like, and that was the thing. I had talked about this when I was talking about Rogue One back in May. It's like, you know, I was already, like, really jaded after The Force Awakens, and then Rogue One turned that around, even though I knew the other movies wouldn't be good. Like, Rogue One was good. And it's the
only one.
It's the only one. And it's what handled character deaths really well. And we'll talk about some of the other deaths in this, because...
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah.
But, bad cannon fodder.
Yeah, then there's the last one here from the Warriors 3 in Thor Ragnarok.
So,
I'll let you handle this.
You guys know, because you follow him, watching a lot of his videos, how he feels about most MCU movies.
Most of them suck. Phase 2 destroyed it.
I'm not very vocal about this, but past Phase 1, I'm pretty... when it came to the MCU. Some of them I loved, like Guardians of the Galaxy. I adored Ant-Man. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought Doctor Strange was okay. I mean, I wasn't as heavily invested, but I thought it was okay. And then there's just some of the others where I'm just like, And, you know, like, I was kind of pretty apathetic to the MCU for a while. And he would bring up, this is a flaw with this movie, this is a flaw with this movie. And I'd be like, it's true, you should say it. I'm still apathetic. I wasn't quite as passionate about it as he was. And I'm just like, yeah, that's fair. I agree with that. I just couldn't bring myself to really care like he did.
Well, I remember when The Winter Soldier came out, and I think I was talking to you, I was for like an hour straight just ranting about all the issues. And you were like...
And I was just like, that was really me. I'm just I was like,
You didn't think it was as bad as I thought it was.
No, because I'm like, as a movie, it was enjoyable. But yeah, as part of the MCU, it does have its problems. But that was just me. And then my dad took me to see Thor Ragnarok. And then for the first time, I knew how it felt to be him. Because I really hated that movie. I hated it so much.
You know my pain.
I hate Thor Ragnarok. I hate it so much. If it was a person, I would punch it, and then I would choke it to death.
Well, maybe we can punch Taika Waititi.
Hell no, I wouldn't wish harm on him. He just wrote a bad script. That's not punishable by death or punch in the face. And just keep him away from Thor. I hate Thor Ragnarok so much. I'm more of a DC fan than I am a Marvel fan. Comic books, not the movies. just so we're clear. But Thor is somebody I've always adored. Especially the first Thor movie. And people are like, it wasn't the greatest thing ever. Oh, okay, true. It was no Captain America First Avenger or Avengers.
Or Iron Man.
Or Guardians of the Galaxy. True, it's not any one of those things. But it was a fantastic origin story in my opinion. Not as perfect as Captain America First Avenger. If anything, that's probably one of the perfect, well, that and Iron Man. They're some of the most perfect origin story like superhero movies, I think.
I think Thor is one of the movies that, especially in Phase 1, that works really good as part of the Phase 1 set.
Yeah.
But, it's like, and you need to see it before you see Avengers.
But I really liked Thor. I really liked Lady Sif. I really liked the Warriors 3. I really liked Loki and how he was set up. I liked Odin. I liked Rhea. I liked Heimdall. I liked Darcy and what's his face and Jane. I liked all these people. Eric, thank you. Yeah. I could never remember him. I mean, I remember him, but I just never remembered his name. And even though, yes, the Dark World is not memorable, I still had moments that I liked. It was mostly the villain that wasn't all that memorable, which is a shame because he had a good actor playing him.
Yeah, it's like you get Christopher Eccleston and let's put him in a big, ugly prosthetic mask and
a very, very bland villain. But it still set up ideas that were very potentially very interesting. And then they said, screw all that. Now, the Warriors 3, they are not main characters, mind you.
They're all supporting cast.
They're supporting cast, but they are important characters. They are important characters to Thor. They've been there since the very first, way back in Phase 1. If you can't figure out what to do with them, you don't just kill them off like they're red shirts in Star Trek. They have names, they're important, and where the frick was Sif? That has nothing to do with this topic, but where was she? I really hate Ragnarok. Well, the worst part about this all was not only were they just killed off like they were nothing, they were swatted like they were gnats. The fact that Thor wasn't there to see his best friends since forever dying. He wasn't there to mourn this. Oh, because we have to be a wacky comedy movie. No. No. Like, you couldn't even have them do, like, a glorious heroic sacrifice. You know, something far more befitting of their characters. Maybe have them dying to protect Heimdall and the rest of the Asgardians so they can escape, or better, dying to protect Thor, so that way Thor can be there when they die, so that way Thor can have this important moment of at least saying goodbye to his friends, or something, or at least having Thor finding out about his friends dying. If you're gonna kill them like they're red shirts, can somebody tell Thor so that way he can mourn them? Because I'm sorry, they're his best friends. You treat them like they're nothing, and then you never mention this again in the rest of the movie. You killed off the Warriors 3. That's a big deal. Odin's death was also really stupid in that movie too. He's just oh, by the way, kids, you have a sister that I never mentioned until suddenly now, and if I die, she'll magically be released from her prison, so that's fine. Okay, thanks, bye. Poof. That was a thing.
That's how Mafia works. That's how Asgardians work. Like, apparently, they just what didn't he like vanish into like pixie dust or something? Stupid?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I thought the Thanos snap happened later. What's going on here? It just, and the whole movie was tonal death. Like, it just, like, it could not, it just, no. You can't keep doing these serious things and then have wacky, goofy comedy, but at the same time, you're not treating these serious things seriously. They, like, don't matter. I mean, you even had the character played by Jeff Goldblum, like, brutally kill somebody, like, melting them, and it's
jokes
right next to Thor, and Thor's sitting here like, oh, ew, gross, nasty, ugh. Like, guy was just melted. Have some class, movie.
Well, yeah.
Like, oh gosh, it's just ugh.
Yeah.
I rented him an hour and a half. I remember this. It was on Snapchat.
Oh, I remember that.
And then the worst part is, everybody was just like, it's the greatest movie ever. And I'm sitting here like, am I living in the wrong timeline? And then I'm like, I feel like Tim. Because that's all he does. He's just like, I hate the Marvel movies. And everyone's just like, they're the greatest thing ever. And he's just, no!
See, everyone's still riding on Avengers hype from 2012, being like, no, take those goggles off.
And I'm like, I understand. I now understand what you've been enduring. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I'm not alone.
Oh, so yeah, that pissed me off like no other. Like no other. And he's already talked about Attack on Titan. Why it's another terrible example of bad cannon fodder.
Right, and we have already discussed that. So, but let's change up let's have a tone shift.
Oh wait, but quickly,
no.
one good cannon fodder also example. Cannon fodder doesn't always have to be groups. Sometimes it can be very small moments, like very quick. Maybe you barely got to know this character, but they leave enough of an impact to where you like them, or endeared to them, or at least endeared for the characters that this is going to affect.
Right.
One death in particular that stood out to the both of us, because I took him to see Godzilla 2014 when it first came out, and that was the second time I saw it for me. The way they handled Ford's mother, Joe's wife, her death was great, because if she's there with a lot of other cannon fodder, with all the other scientists that were going to die to the radioactive radiation that's coming out. And it was a very emotional moment to see between Joe and his wife.
Right, because he was sitting there. He didn't want to shut it because his wife is down there. They were trying to get out, but then he had to shut it.
He had to shut it. And it was so emotional because all those people banging on the doors and he's sitting there in tears saying, I'm sorry. And then as soon as those people move and then you see him and his wife and when he puts his hand over his mouth and then he starts choking up and she just says, I'm sorry. We couldn't make it. We didn't make it. And you're just sitting there emotional. You didn't really get to know her, but her acting was so good, and especially, oh my gosh,
Bryan Cranston.
Oh man, talk about an emotional gut punch. You only got to know her for 2 minutes, just like with Lisa in Castlevania, a character you've only known for 2 minutes, but she was endeared enough, and especially the reaction of her husband, is really where it punches you in the gut.
Right, and that sets up a lot about Joe and Ford's characters going forward in the movie.
It's the catalyst, for their characters, for the moment where all of this starts, where all their issues and trauma, it's all started from the moment of her death. And
it really does do a lot to make even the audience personally care about this catastrophe that happened, because a lot of people did die, and that was a big, horrible event.
But she had a name.
Yeah.
The other people, even though, yes, they're sad, they're innocents, they didn't have a name. She had a name.
Well, that's something that also ties her to the main character, so you empathize with them for her death, and it's something that really, it's like they don't keep her around long enough for you to really, really get attached to her. But
you attached enough.
Yeah, and you understand from that whole beginning of the movie, when you get to understand the dynamics of Ford and his family. And so that, afterwards, when you have the time skip to the current time, and you see him as an adult.
With his wife
and child. And then you see his father.
Well, and you can even see from that little snippet how much differently Ford is with his family. Because you see, in the opening, how his father was distant a little bit, always on the phone and talking. And even though it shows up him and his father weren't always that close. But they were close enough, and I think you realize the glue of that was the mother, because the mother's there mediating between the father and the hesitant son.
Yeah.
And that's what's getting the connection there. But then she's gone, so then you realize that mediator's gone.
Well, and his and Joe really kind of went off the deep end.
Yeah, but whereas Ford, when he comes home from wherever war he was sent to, you see him immediately. He's very affectionate with his wife and his child. So you could probably tell from that moment, Joe probably said, I'm never going to have that relationship. So then you're always fearing for Elizabeth Olsen's character because of it. That's probably on the back of Ford's mind constantly. Like, he does not want his wife, because the son got away, the little boy got away, the wife was sitting there in the city, so you're always sitting there thinking, is she going to be another casualty just like his mom? And she wasn't, so that makes their reunion that much more emotional. Because that's the other thing. Fear of somebody dying and then finding out that they're okay is another good way to kind of utilize death, because if that's something real people can go through. There's natural disasters, you're separated from your wife, your children, your spouse, husband, friends, even your dog or your cat. There's even videos of people like crying, trying to find their pet, and then only to suddenly find like their dog in the rubble of like their home after a tornado hit, and just how emotional they are. Like that fear only to like have like that immediate like, oh my goodness, like that relief.
Well, and that's also a good writing technique to use. And it's like, you can create drama and stakes and tension without killing off the character, but just with the possibility.
Knowing the possibility that it's real and it could happen and they can be taken from you forever.
Yeah, and that character could die, but then they're not dead. And it's like, and then that's the relief of, oh, they're okay. And so,
they're together.
Yeah, so after you build up that tension through the story and then you release it in a satisfying way.
Great, because there are some bad fake out deaths too.
Yeah, they're so bad. I mean, because sometimes it's like, here, I came back and there's literally no reason why it should have happened. But it's like,
didn't you die? Nope.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it being well written, which is always, that's
always the crux of the issue here.
Yeah.
Is it written well?
Yeah, but it's like, and that's something that you can do, and you don't have to immediately kill a character off. You can just essentially tease that the character could die, and just to keep the audience on edge, just to sort of make them relax, okay, no, they're fine.
Yeah, so, cannon fodder. Yeah. I think we got that one covered.
Yeah. So, there's probably one of the best written deaths that anyone could probably agree with. It was probably Maze Hughes from Fullmetal Alchemist.
Oh, without a doubt.
And what makes this stand out more than any other death on this list is just how popular Maze Hughes is. He is one of the most popular characters. Even compared to the main cast, he is one of the most popular characters. And the
amazing thing about Hughes is there's been different adaptations of Fullmetal Alchemist. You have the 2003 anime, you have the manga, you have Brotherhood, you have the terrible live-action movie.
Yeah.
But every single time, Maze Hughes is always dying in those things, and it never changes. Even the terrible live-action movie, it never changes how emotional it is to have Hughes die.
Well, yeah, even if they changed up the order and how things worked and completely screwed it up in the live-action movie.
Well, yeah, the live-action
the way he
crap,
died was still...
It's still sad. It's still, like...
They actually even made it even worse.
It's still a gut punch.
Yeah.
But not a bad gut punch.
No. And that's the thing is, when you really look at Maze Hughes' death, there's a lot of reasons why. Of course, because the story is well written.
Oh, it's very well written.
Yeah.
There's a YouTuber we both love, Mahler, and he always talks about how like logic and objectivity and stuff like that. But people like will say things like, well, the character has to do this stupid thing in order for the plot to move along, and he'd be like, they can't be logical because humans are emotional. And he very counterpoints out, like, well, no, you can still have, you can even still have a horror movie where characters are very logical, make nothing but logical choices, but they're simply out of their element. They do everything right, and a bad thing still happens. It's just simply, or you just make the villain smarter, or you just have, I don't know, like, they think realistically, but they're in a supernatural situation, or
they're genre savvy, but they're the wrong genre savvy.
Or even maybe they're the right genre savvy, but like
they just couldn't deal with it,
or just bad luck. Like Maze Hughes had just a split-second moment of bad luck.
Right, and this was what when Maze Hughes he was looking into the big government conspiracy.
He did everything right.
Right, and so once he stumbled onto the truth, and he was actually, this is something that eventually led them to discovering the statewide transmutation
and
circle.
all the conspiracies.
And all the conspiracies behind that in Laboratory 5. That's when the homunculuses come after him. And the homunculuses are nigh immortal.
And he's just an ordinary guy with some knives.
He doesn't have any weapons on him outside of some knives. He doesn't have guns. He doesn't have alchemy. But when Lust comes after him to kill him, he manages to be fast enough to react to knock her out long enough so that he can escape. So he goes and tries to contact Roy, and then Envy...
And he figures out that the person that's with him is not even the real Maria Ross. Right? That's her name?
Yeah, Maria.
Yeah. Like, he figured it out. Like, a shapeshifter who is pretty much dang perfect at his shapeshifting, but he figured out that that wasn't really her and was able to...
Because he noticed a slight detail was off.
But just the mole.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like the mole's on the wrong side?
It was the wrong side of the face, yeah.
And from just briefly turning around to look at this fake, that's when it immediately hit him. But he still played along for just a little bit, just long enough, just so that way he could catch like his would-be, and then eventually is the would-be assailant off guard. And then
what caught him was when Envy transformed into his wife, and that was
split-second hesitation.
And that was all it took to
kill him, because that's all it takes. Just snapping the fingers and you're dead.
But it's like when you first see that for the first time, you expect him to just be killed immediately.
Oh yeah, because if I'm in like these things versus Mace Hughes, I'm like, and Roy's nowhere to be seen, Ed's on the other side of the country. There's no one there to help him. It's Maze. Of course he's dead. I was surprised he lasted longer. Like, I thought when Lust entered the room, I thought, oh my gosh, this is where he's going to die, isn't he? And then I was just like, oh, he got out of there. Yeah. I was surprised. And then as soon as he said the mole's like on the wrong side of the face, then I'm just like, oh no, he's going to die, isn't he? And then at first things seemed to be going good, and I was like a little bit like, wait, is he going to actually survive this? Like, I was like, this... At first I was thinking it was going to subvert my expectations and think he was actually going to survive this, because I was like, no, he's going to die. And then, boom, he died. And then I was just like, no! But a good no.
But he was intelligent. He was smart. He did everything that he could, because the only people that can actually fight against the homunculi are strong alchemists. So it's like, and someone like Roy is the only one who could really easily kill one, because he can just go boom, 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 and burn them like he did with Lust. But it's like, but pretty much any normal human, like, they're skewered, you know, and you can't stand a chance, so he
lasted far longer.
Right, and this is why you see that he's smart. He's smart, and this guy's a tough soldier. Like, yeah, he fought alongside Roy, so this isn't just some normal guy, despite the fact that
he's a goofy dad. Like when the going gets tough, he gets tough.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why his death it doesn't feel insulting, because
he did everything he could.
Right. And another thing that makes his death work, and this is something that I was actually thinking about this a little while ago, is that Mace Hughes isn't a super important character.
He's important enough.
You know, I know that sounds bad when I say that, but Mace Hughes isn't a main character.
A supporting character.
Yeah, he is a supporting character. He has no real character arc of his own. He's basically already gone through...
Yeah, he's a complete character.
Yeah,
he's simply there to influence other characters.
Right.
Be their moral support.
Right. He doesn't have any character arc. He doesn't... He kind of influences the main plot, but more so just to kind of push it along. So when he died, it's not like if they killed off like Riza or Roy or even Winry. It's like, it doesn't feel like they completely robbed a whole bunch of the story. It's like, and it's so weird because...
Well, and how that impacts characters like Ed and Roy especially.
Right. Basically, every single main character was affected by his death. Like Roy, Al, Winry, all the military characters like Roy,
even
Riza, Maria.
Oh, and Sheska,
like Armstrong, Team Mustang. Every one of them was affected. So you have his death influencing at least a dozen characters that are all main significant characters.
And the gut punch. I still remember whenever I used to have a DVD that came with a Fullmetal Alchemist PS2 game I had that had a couple of like the 2003 episodes, and it had a director's commentary on Maze's death, and I think Travis Willingham was the ADR director of that episode. I think it was Sunny Strait, actually, if I remember correctly. And when they were talking about getting the line right from Gracia, where she says, like, stop burying daddy, my daddy has to go to work, mommy, stop them. And they wanted to get that line right, and they had to keep making her do that take over and over and over again, and Sunny is over there, he's just like, why do I keep making her do this? Have I no soul? Just like, because of like when you hear that line, whether it's the 2003 version, the Brotherhood version, like,
or even if you're reading the manga,
or if you're watching the Japanese version, I mean, just in the acting, like, like when you were listening to these actresses like deliver that line of like, my daddy has to go to work, like, why are they burying daddy, and like just like the innocence of a child not understanding the situation, and it just, oh gosh, like I gush like a baby.
It's so emotional, and even when you see Roy, a character who's normally very composed, crying, but he it's like when he says that it's raining today.
It's raining
and
today.
It's like,
oh gosh, like, and that's the other great thing about it, because the other thing that's insulting sometimes is where you kill off a character that's important to the characters, and then sometimes they never mention it again, only until like, oh, the second to last episode, oh, you killed my best friend, now I care.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, like this is something that continuously affected Roy throughout the entirety of the story. Like he wanted justice for Mace.
And it ran up all the way till near the end when he finally confronts Envy, and he just loses
it.
And he reduces Envy down to the little core, that little green.
He was almost Ash.
Yeah. And it was actually also important for Riza, because she had to step in to stop him from completely losing his mind, because if he crossed that line, then she couldn't, like, he was her hope. He was a hope for so many people who went through the Ishvalan massacre and did horrible things, that Roy would be the one to basically be the redemption, that they could fix things again. And without Roy, it's like, Riza especially felt like they would lose that hope, because she said that if she was forced to kill him, she'd have to kill herself too, because she felt like there was nothing worth living if Roy didn't do that, and it really affects so much.
Like Maze was important.
Yes, and even Nina and Alexander.
Oh my gosh, yes, Nina. There's another good death.
Yeah.
It's tragic and it was shocking. Like, but not done for just shock value. It's done like a pure tragedy, like a Shakespearean tragedy in a way.
Right, what happened to her? It's like you understand just how twisted Sho Tucker is, and then when
because there was no way to fix her. Like, honestly, even though it's sad, what Scar did was a mercy.
Yeah,
and as horrifying as that sounds to say, what happened to Nina and Alexander, like, honestly, the only way to give them release from that is death.
Well, yeah, because
they were also in immense pain.
Well, and there was no way that they didn't understand the Chimera research well enough to undo it, because you have even the more successful Chimeras, they were still stuck in their form.
And it was implied that after Shao got arrested, that essentially what would happen to Nina and Alexander,
they probably would have gone old Yeller.
Well, they would have been. Well, no, they probably would have been just experimented on by the military.
Oh yeah, because with everyone who was involved with that, with Bradley and Father,
and
everyone,
it's like, honestly, the death was a mercy for that poor child and dog.
Yeah, but even then, Nina's death affected Ed and Al so much is that
Huge.
It's like it's one of those things where they never wanted that to happen to anyone else.
And she was a very minor character.
Oh,
but it was never forgotten in the story.
Well, and I know I even remember I was rewatching parts of Brotherhood, and I was watching the final episode, like the epilogue. And when Al is going to go on his journey with the other Chimera guys, and they were like, "So why are you doing this?" And he said, and Al sits there and he says, "Because there was a little girl one time that I couldn't save, and I never want that to happen anyway." And it was like, and it's like they made sure that wasn't forgotten. It's not like she died. They're sad for 5 minutes and then
for
they
like
move on.
one episode and
yeah, no, it's like, and it means something. It's like
death is a serious issue,
right? And if you're going to take that step in the writing, if you're going to cross,
it's a very serious and adult issue. So write it like an adult.
Yeah, treat it as the serious issue that it actually is, not like. Not like, okay, we're going to do this just so that we can make the audience go
for cheap, just get some cheap sorrows.
Yeah, and then move on and act like, and not even give it the attention that it really deserves, because
go for the long term, not the short term.
Right.
Anyways, next one.
No, this is actually one you wanted to talk about.
Oh yes, speaking of go for the long term, not the short term. That's a perfect segue. So he mentioned in the last video, whenever he was talking about how an actress needed to leave the show.
Right. Person of interest. It was the actress for Carter.
And now, this has happened before. Somebody, like, either they can't get an actor back or something like that. Like, it's even happened in movies. Like, I would cite as really terrible examples as, the first one that comes to mind, where it's just like, oh, we can't get this actress back, was in Terminator 3, where, oh, Sarah Connor just happened to die off screen.
Yeah.
Like, really? You're gonna do my girl Linda Hamilton like that so dirty? And they did it in Jaws too. I think it was in Jaws 4 where they like offhandedly mentioned that the main character, Brody, ironically enough, how he died off screen. Like the main character of the first 2 Jaws movies. Like, really? You're gonna do the main character, the most popular character, so dirty like that? Died off screen. Just because you couldn't get the actor, why not just simply say they're somewhere else? Like,
they're dealing with something. You can put a character on a bus without killing them off. You can just say, oh, they're off screen dealing with something else, so they can't be here right now.
It's just so disrespectful.
Come up with a decent explanation.
It's just so disrespectful. And with TV shows, now granted, those are movies. Movies are a little bit different than TV shows. With a TV show has a rare opportunity that a movie doesn't have. It can build this up over time if an actor says that they can't stay.
After like a certain season.
So a writer can say, look, stay on for this long until this point, and then we'll kill your character off. So that way you can go on and do other projects. But then take that whole season to start prepping the audience for the chance that this character, this beloved character, is probably not going to be here for a while. Not like how Person of Interest did it. How... And now I know some people are going to be like, wait, you're bringing this up because this show is a little bit on the notorious side for having some bad character deaths. Yes, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, guys. Now I know. Tara's death, bullcrap. There's so many deaths in that show.
You told me about some of those.
There's so many deaths in that show that it's complete and utter bullcrap. Don't worry, I agree. But there is one that honestly I think Joss Whedon handled very masterfully and perfectly. Joyce Summers, the mother of Buffy, died in season 5. She was a very well-beloved character, like a mother to the entire cast. Everybody loved her. Heck, even Spike, the former villain, loved her. Like how could you not? Joyce was very lovable. Near the beginning of season 5, it was introduced that Joyce was getting a tumor. Or cancer, something like that. She died of an aneurysm later on in season 5. So, that's where the trope funny aneurysm moment came from. It was because of Buffy.
Oh.
So, yeah, but it prepared you. Because if it starts off with Joyce realizing that she's getting sick, she goes to the hospital, they discover something wrong with her, but she goes in and gets treatment. She has her ups and her downs, like any real person who gets sick would. But now the audience is prepared to understand that she is sick. There is a chance that this can kill her because this thing has killed people in real life. Now, granted, some people survive it. So you got a little bit of the hope, but there's always that chance. Now, granted, Buffy and everybody else didn't even want to consider the other option. They always wanted to be hopeful. If anything, they were almost in a way kind of in denial about the option that she could die. Like, heck, when Buffy discovers her mother dead, her entire mind, for the very beginning of the episode, has her, like, daydreaming of her imagining, like, if she came home just a little bit earlier, maybe she would have noticed something was wrong with her mom. She could call the ambulance. They would find out what's wrong with her, and then they would save her life. And then she's, like, talking with her mother, and her mother's just like, Buffy, I don't know what I'd do without you. And it's tragic because then it comes back to, like, Buffy in the actual moment where she's despondent, and you see the paramedics trying in vain, but they can't revive her. She was dead before they got there. And it's a real moment because of when people die, that's something that family members often do. They just said, like, I even did it when my dog died. I just thought to myself, like, because I hung out with him the day before.
Oh yeah.
And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, like, because she got sick a lot, and I didn't think anything else of it, because she'd always get sick, and then she'd be fine the next day. Like, literally, it was always 24-hour bugs. And she didn't act any different. She was old. And so I know it's a dog. It's a little bit different from a mother, but it's like, but I even did that, and I know there's people who've done that too. They'll blame themselves. They'll be like, if only I'd noticed sooner, I could have done something. I could have saved their life. Like that's a very normal human reaction, and I think that's what Joss Whedon really nailed there. Now I know people, you guys hate Joss Whedon, whatever. Yeah.
Yes, he's a human scumbag.
But he's a pretty good writer.
Yes.
Sometimes. Some of the terrible deaths notwithstanding, Buffy. But Joyce was not one of them. She was very well handled because of the impact she left on the show and the fact that they never forgot her. And like how it was built up. And so when it died and they had a whole episode, an entire episode dedicated to just mourning the memory of Joyce Summers. Like not half of an episode, an entire episode, just showing how her death affected everybody. How it affected Xander, how it affected Tara, how it affected Willow, how it affected Giles, how it affected freaking Spike, how it affected Buffy, how it affected Dawn, how it affected Anya. Like, all of these people that Summer left an impact on. And it was still felt, even in some of the terrible seasons later. Like, you'll see things like even Dawn, like, desperately trying to, like, ask Spike if there's a way that she could necromancy her mom back to life, only just to be, like, told, like, you don't want to mess with that kind of magic because what you're looking for, sometimes things won't come back right. And it's just, like, and, like, she was never forgotten. Like, even though other world-ending stuff kept happening, even though the seasonal rots happened after a lot of season 5, at least Joyce was never forgotten, and her importance was never forgotten. And the actress was allowed to tastefully be sent off in a very tragic but human way. That's all I got to say on that one.
Yeah. Well, and it's really about how it's written, because they could have just had some vampire come in and kill her and stab her in the chest.
God, that would have been so dumb.
Yeah, and it's like...
Kind of like how they killed Tara. Oh, well, Tara got shot by a ricocheted bullet that was meant to kill Buffy. And need I remind you, the guy was pointing at Buffy point blank, and he did hit Buffy. And then, like, whenever he turned the gun up here, and here's Tara having a casual conversation with her girlfriend Willow. They're finally starting to make amends because they broke up and stuff like that. And
dead.
Yeah. Tara literally says, "Willow, what's that on your shirt?" Only to just drop dead right then and there. It was the worst thing in my life. I was just like, I didn't even ship Willow and Tara. I was always a Willow Oz shipper, but I love Tara. She is literally pureness incarnate.
And then
they killed her. Why? Like, gosh.
And that's the problem. A lot of deaths are like that. They're just the, whoops, here we go, they're dead now.
It was so cheap, too. It was just for the sake of cheap shock value. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, really? Really? And to make matters worse, then Willow had to end up getting a really terrible girlfriend later on. And I'm like, oh, great. You had literal Sunshine Willow and Tara together. I didn't even ship that. But you know what? They, it
wasn't like offensively bad.
No, like Tara's like a good person. She's a genuinely good human being. And then you have Kennedy, like the worst thing ever. If a character ever got killed, Joss Whedon, why couldn't it have been her? Oh.
We can't have nice things.
No, she was terrible, awful. Thank goodness they broke up in the comics. Ugh.
Speaking of other deaths in scary supernatural shows.
Yes.
Well, in Stranger Things, there are 2 primary deaths that have really been really big.
One is a meme.
Yeah, one became a meme.
Justice for Barb.
Yeah. One was Barb, Nancy's friend, and then one was Bob in season 2.
Well, and then before that, there was that one guy, the very first episode, Benny, and I'm just like, don't have a B name in Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah, Benny, like the nice diner guy.
That's another good cannon fodder death.
Oh, yeah, like a character who, we learn his name, he helps Eleven out.
He didn't overstay like anything, you're attached just enough so that way when he dies, it's sad. Because all he was just trying to be a good Samaritan to help out a poor, scared kid.
And he was trying to get her help only for the...
He just didn't know. He was just a naive bystander who didn't realize there was a far bigger conspiracy wrapped around this little psychic child.
Right, and then when they come in, they immediately shoot him.
He just thought she was a scared little abused girl.
So yeah, he was trying to help her out, and and
And it really kickstarted the show, kind of, in a way, just to like, yes, Will disappeared, and that's serious, but just to see like this woman who pretends to be a social worker coming in to help him and being all friendly and chatty with him,
and then bang,
and then just turns and just shoots him point blank, and like just like Eleven's reaction was mine, like where I was just like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
and I was just like, I was getting to like him.
Yeah.
I was literally like, yeah, when 11 kills her.
Yeah. But Barb's death, it's like a lot of people, I think, really kind of misunderstand her death. Like, they're like, it's so unfair that she died.
Like, no, she's like Benny. She's cannon fodder. Now, I'm not a fan of a lot of horror movies. I'm not really into horror, but I've seen a lot of horror movies because of in middle school, I had friends who were obsessed with horror movies. And they just forced me to watch a lot of them. And I've seen a lot of even really terrible ones. Some that I wish to forget. Some that I don't even remember the title of, because some of them all kind of bleed together. Some of them do stand out. That's how I got introduced to the first Terminator movie, mind you, because technically that one was a horror. But like a lot of Barb's death is very stereotypical of 80s, especially teen 80s horror. In fact, what's really great about Stranger Things is they take certain 80 movies tropes and they stick them with a different generation. With the teenager characters, they feel like they're ripped straight out of an 80s horror movie. You have the stereotypical pretty boy, douchebag boyfriend.
Steve.
And then you have the stereotypical goody-goody girl, who will end up the final girl, Nancy. Yeah. You have the
sort of weird
kid, but sort of more to him. Sort of kind of has a thing with the final girl.
Jonathan.
And then you have characters who are vapid a-holes. That would be Steve's friends.
They would be the ones dying and getting gruesomely killed.
If only.
If only.
I wouldn't. Nothing of value would have been
Where were the demidogs when they were...
And then you have the stereotypical sacrificial lambs. The Barbs. In horror movies, there are so many characters that tend to be like they're at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's Barb. And a lot of times, the final girl's best friend will always get murdered in a lot of these movies.
It's always something that makes something a little personal for them.
Well, yeah, for the final girl, it's always either her boyfriend, her love interest dies, or her best friend will die. And that's what spurs her on to, take out the monster. For Nancy, she was kind of like, wanting to just live in her little bubble. But her bubble starts to crack. She's a little bit, in a way, like Hopper, kind of. Like how they wanted to live in their bubbles. And then they start to notice things wrong. Granted, Nancy noticed it sooner than Hopper did, but... And it was all because of Barb. Barb was her catalyst for her character development. Everything centered around Barb. And Nancy wouldn't have evolved as a character if it wasn't for Barb. And Barb's death, for a character who only appeared in 1.5 episodes.
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
She really had a huge effect on the plot. For Nancy's character at least. People said that she was ignored. And I'm like, Nancy's entire motivation was all centered on Barb.
Right, she wanted to find Barb because she felt guilty that she was off sleeping with Steve while...
Nancy's entire plot, the reason she teamed up with Jonathan was all for Barb's sake, because they had a common goal. She had a friend that was missing, he had a brother that was missing. They felt that there's too much similar to their stories, and so she thought that if they find Will, then they'll probably find Barb. So they had a united goal, a common cause. But her motivations were solely to find her best friend. And then in season 2, she wanted justice for her best friend. And then you get to meet, Barb's poor parents.
Well, and that was such a sad thing, is because Nancy was, because you find out that Nancy had been visiting them consistently, just trying to...
Out of guilt.
Yeah, just to meet with them. And you see that they had been blowing so much money on some investigators.
Just to get answers, because they didn't believe the BS story that... The conspiracy people threw out, that she just ran away. Because she's not that kind of girl.
No.
And they knew that that wasn't true. They needed closure on what happened to their missing girl.
Right, and they were basically...
And they were just trying to sweep this under the rug. Their daughter, who was killed, and they're trying to sweep it under the rug. and they're in the dark about all this, and you feel so bad for them, and you feel so bad because Nancy knows, but she's forced to be silent about it.
Right, because it's like they were blowing so much money, they didn't even have. They were so distracted.
They had to sell their house.
Yeah, they were. What was it? They were like mortgaging or.
Yeah, like you saw a for sale sign, if I remember correctly.
Right, because they were going to lose their house because they were blowing so much money on this, and they were so distracted that they forgot about Nancy coming in, so they had to get KFC for dinner.
Yeah, like.
And it was like, and it feels really bad because it's like it's not just. Oh, they got KFC instead of making something. It's that their mental state is so screwed up.
But because they want to do more because this is their daughter's best friend, so you can tell that...
Well, Nancy's always been really kind to them, especially after this happened. It's like...
Yeah, like, even though you don't, like, actually, like, even in season 1, whenever you see, when Nancy first mentioned that Barb's missing, you see Nancy's with her mom, and then you see Barb's parents actually sitting across, so you know that Nancy personally called them to tell them that something's wrong. And it's just like, but that's just a precursor, and you feel so sorry for these characters. So for a character that you don't even know that well, it elicits sympathy for not only Nancy, but also for Barb's parents, and you want to see these parents get closure because of any parent who had a child missing. You feel nothing but for them, and at the very least hope that they can at least bury their child.
Well, and that was something that Nancy was doing when they met with what was his name, Murray.
Murray.
It's like when he was helping them concoct a new cover story, something that would expose Hawkins' lab, but
not expose all the truth, but just enough to prove that Barb died and they covered this up.
Right. So then that's why they came up with their own story, even if it was a fake story of what happened to her.
They could at least. They could twist the truth just enough, because the real truth, obviously, nobody would believe.
No, yeah, no one would believe that there's another dimension full of monsters
that ate their daughter.
Yeah, so that's why they came up with that story, just so that they could have closure, so they can say, okay, their daughter.
Well, and at the very thing, this company would have to be sued, and then look at that, money for Barb's parents. Like, right. Nancy wanted not only justice for Barb, but for Barb's family.
Right, and
because they did not deserve this. They were. Like that is like unfair. Like they couldn't at the very least provide a fake body like they did with Will for them to bury.
Yeah, at the very least say, okay, your daughter is dead, and then at least let them have some closure, because the not knowing was worse than...
The not knowing is always worse.
Right, it's like, okay, just say, if they had known from the beginning that Barb had died, and if they had provided like a fake body, just to say, okay, they
would have buried it and they would have moved on with their lives.
It would have been sad, but they at least would have had something to go off of. But with nothing, with some random, oh, well, she ran away story, no, they wouldn't believe it. And this is why the writing of that death is so good.
It's very stereotypical horror movie, but it also, because it ties into the developing of Nancy's character, as well as like just the sympathy and the fact that how this minor character could have this overarching effect on the entire story.
Well, and that's another thing. It's like when you're choosing a character to die, it's kind
of like Nina's in a way.
Yeah.
Like how this one character who was there for a very short time had this huge effect, this huge impact.
Well, and that's also, I think, some of the best deaths. It's like, it's not the main characters. It's not the ones that are the really important ones that you have a lot of investment in. It's the side characters that you're not as invested in, but more so you're invested in the characters that you already care about and how this affects them.
And you have sympathy enough.
Right.
Like, especially for, like, how she died. Like, gosh, like... That's a really terrible way for poor Barb to die. She was eaten alive.
Yeah, dragged into the Upside Down, and then they find her half-eaten corpse.
Like in
season 2, it's like,
oof. Like that's really gruesome for that poor girl. Like you feel so bad for her. Like that's a terrible fate.
Well, and the fact that we can talk about how much her death affected the series, like all we've talked about, like that just shows you just how important her death was. It's not something that was forgotten. They didn't forget about it. It wasn't always in the forefront.
It's all Nancy could think about.
Right. It's mostly important to Nancy's character.
In fact, one of my favorite moments is when Will is back and all his friends are excited. They're talking and they're hugging him in the hospital. And then you get a shot, it turns to Nancy, and nothing is spoken. In fact, you hear the boys, like, their voices are starting to slowly fade out to where they're nothing but muffled background noise. And Nancy's just sitting there quiet, and you just see this smile dissolve into, like, this sorrow. And she just turns and leaves. And without saying anything, you realize what it is. Nancy's happy that her brother could get closure and his friend returned to him, but she'll never get that. Yes. She'll never get her best friend back like her brother got his best friend back. and it's tragic. And it's like whenever people say Barb is forgotten, I'm like, did we not see this amazing, well-shot scene that focused heavily on showing instead of telling? Like, it's one of my favorite scenes just because of how emotional it was.
Right, and just because they're not all saying, hey guys, remember when Barb died? It's like, that doesn't mean it's not important.
It's like Nancy's whole motivation was Barb.
Well, and you also have to look at the dominoes that this sets into effect with the characters and how, this also affected Steve, because through Nancy, that started his character development in the end of season 1 and then going into season 2 where we had Dad Steve.
Yes.
And it's like, so you also have to really look at that. Like,
well, and because of the disappearance of Barb and the disappearance of Will, that's what brought Nancy and Jonathan together, and they could grow together as characters.
Right. And that's when they got their own character arcs. And it's like, and really, and that's the
Barb
thing.
was this domino effect, and that's why her death was so important, and why narratively it makes sense. Her, as we said, the coma test, her going into a coma would not have necessitated this.
Right.
It wouldn't have worked. Some characters do have to die in order for the plot to work.
Because the plot literally could not have happened any other way.
Nancy never would have grown had Barb not gone missing and died.
If Barb went into a coma and was at the hospital, then Nancy never would have properly changed. And then Steve never would have properly changed.
She never would have tried to get closer to Jonathan and help Jonathan.
And Jonathan himself wouldn't have grown because
if he would have kept closing himself off from people, because of Nancy's constant trying to reach out, wouldn't have happened.
And his bonding with her helped him grow as a character too.
And all of this happened because of Barb died. It's sad, but it was necessary.
Right.
Another one, well, not as much as Barb, was Bob. And I actually is another character where I like dead ringer in any horror movie. A character like Bob would have died within the first 5 minutes. No offense to Sean Austin, he's an amazing actor.
He was great, and he was great in Stranger Things. But it's like, but then
he's fantastic as Samwise Gamgee too.
Yeah.
Sadly, he's not Samwise Gamgee here.
He wasn't armed with pans.
If he was Samwise Gamgee, he absolutely would.
He would have been decapitating David dogs.
He would have killed the Mind Flayer himself single-handedly. But alas, wrong series.
And he would have had dinner ready by 7.
Yes, he would have, with his garden fully prepared.
But with Bob's death, when I first was watching this, even if I'm not as well versed in horror movies, it's like I would have suspected immediately. Okay, so this guy
for this perfectly nice boyfriend. Yep, he's gonna die.
Well, yeah, and this character introduced as Joyce's new boyfriend. It's like
who's dorky and
there's
nice. Nothing wrong with him.
And I mean, you can tell he and Joyce aren't like the perfect fit, but he's nice to her. He's supportive of her and her family.
Far better than Lonnie.
Yeah, so it's like, and even if he didn't really help, he was always supportive of Will, and it's like you can tell
he actually helped the plot. Like, I was surprised.
Well, and this is one of the things that's also great is that he didn't just sit there and then die. It's like throughout the season 2, it's like he actually does come in.
He does contribute a bit, and I was shocked because I kept waiting for Bob to just. Not that I hated him, I actually liked Bob, but I just was like, I just expect him to die, and I was surprised how long Bob lasted. Like, he's like in any horror movie, he's literally the first 10 minutes type of character that dies, or like halfway through the movie if you want to be generous, not in the third act.
Yeah.
And this was a third act death. I was surprised. Well, and he lasted so long too. Like, he had so many close calls, and then only to finally, whenever that broom fell, and then I knew it. I was like, but it had happened. I knew it was going to happen. And it's sad, but it's just like with Nancy, because you see, the whole season, Joyce was kind of holding back because she knew something was wrong with her baby boy. And she knew something was wrong and she wanted to help him. As she was yelling at all the people at the Hawkins lab, to fix her poor baby boy. So she knew something was wrong, but at the same time, there's moments that, granted she didn't know, but things where Will's he's like, I hate the cold, or I hate the heat. It's like a warm bath. He wants cold water, and that's odd. But she would still give him that. She was kind of enabling it a little bit because of it's still her baby boy. Yes, she wants what's wrong with him to be done with, but at the same time, she doesn't want to make things worse because she doesn't really know what's going on. But once Bob died, all bets were off. She's just like, no, I'm getting this thing out of my son, and I don't care how uncomfortable this moment is going to be for either of us. Like, as she had all these hot everything all around him, like, and you knew the reason why, like, she would put poor Will in this uncomfortable situation, and she didn't want to, but it's just like the man that she truly loved was dead, and it's because of these monsters that it happened, these monsters that's controlling her baby, and she's just like, I'm not going to hold back anymore. Like, I'm going to save my son no matter how hard it's going to be. It's like, and it's straight up out of The Exorcist, how creepy it was. In fact, one of the things that I love about Bob's death was how originally it was supposed to be much different. He was supposed to die much sooner, but they were going to have Will, possessed Will, kill him, strangle him. And the Duffers had the right of mind to realize that this wouldn't have worked. One, because they have Sean Astin. You might as well keep him around a little bit longer when you got an amazing actor like that. But two, Will's already put through so freaking much. You're going to add traumatizing the child when he wakes up and gets a sense of mind, realizing that he murdered his mother's boyfriend, potential new stepfather.
A guy who was nothing but loving and supportive of him, too.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's too much to... Will's already gone through enough.
Like, no. And,
just let him relax.
And that's a little too on the grimdark territory.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no. Like, have him contribute to the plot. Have him be helpful. And then have him, like, but die. And it kind of like Mace Hughes. He tried doing as much as he could, but he forgot the gun. Now, granted, it's because of... He's an ordinary person. Now people could be like, isn't that stupid? Like, no, like he's not Hopper, he's not a cop.
Well, and his focus was getting onto the computers because that was his specialty.
And he was good at all that. He did all that stuff right.
And it really shows, like, this guy who's a normal guy, how brave he was to go into the lab and to find that computer so that he can...
He knew it was death, and he still followed Hopper in anyway. He knew there was a good chance he was not walking out of there, but Joyce was in there. Will was in there. He was going to go in there.
Right, and he did a really good job of surviving, but when he was trying to sneak around and he bumped the
Even without a gun, he did pretty dang good surviving as long as he did. Like when he forgot that gun. Like, I was surprised he made it that far down the hallway.
It's like I was just waiting for...
If that broom never existed, he would have gotten out of there.
That's just a moment of bad luck at the wrong time.
It's just the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's such a horror movie thing, though.
Well, but and even then, when he dies, you feel sad because...
Oh, just Joyce's reaction and how Hopper has to literally drag her out of there kicking and screaming. Like, oh, it's such a gut punch. And to see, like, sweet, pudgy little Sean Astin, like, trying to fight these things off of him that are all, like, swarming him and just eating him alive. Like, it's brutal to see that. But it's just, I wasn't mad. Like, I had a feeling like it was going to happen. I was prepared for it.
Yeah. And
heck, even that episode prepared for it. From the moment the camera pans and you see the gun was left behind, it's telling you...
He's not going to make it.
He's not going to make it.
Well, it's like, and everything was done to set up. And even then, they still made him contribute. He figured out the map that Will was drawing.
He saved Hopper's life.
Yeah. It's like, and... You know, then he was good with the computers, and even then, after he died, they actually have a bit, like, the kids kind of have an obituary where they realize this guy was...
Because he started the AV club.
Yeah, so it's something that
like Bob was given proper respect. Like,
right.
Like, honestly, death is something that should be given the proper respect.
Right, and it's something that ultimately, it's like, and of course, being well written around that, again, is one of the important things. It's like, okay, yeah, he died. A character that we really liked from an actor that we like, but it was done in a way that didn't feel disrespectful.
Yes. You said you wanted to talk a little more about Godzilla last video.
Yeah, you see, the thing with Joe Brody was that, it is a point that I had made before, is that when you have these side characters, and Joe Brody was a side character, he was a supporting character to Ford.
No, I understand people's disappointment. It's not because of the character itself. It's because of the actor who played him.
Yeah.
Bryan Cranston commanded amazing presence, but he was still a side character who had a purpose to serve, and that purpose was served.
Right, and like I had said before, he got so much more he got so much closure over what happened to his wife. He realized what the mudo that was there, that
he got the answer he was looking for right before he died of what happened. He wanted to know there was something bigger going on that was being hidden. There it is.
So after the, what was it, 15 years or something?
Yes.
It was like, of the years of being seen as nothing more than a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Well, even by his own son.
Yeah. It's like they thought he was just a crazy lunatic, and only to be proven, no, he was right. There was something that happened. And he got the answers.
And he still lived long enough to pass on some words to his son. It's words that the son carried through the entire movie.
Well, yeah, and I like that because, you know, sometimes it works with a character that doesn't have the time to deliver their final words. Like, I think in Lord of the Rings,
Theoden?
Yes.
Theoden's death's another fantastic death.
Yes, and then you also have like Shmi's death in Attack of the Clones, where she couldn't get "I love you" out. But it's like, sometimes it's good to have that final moment where the character actually gets to say something before they die.
And even then, he hadn't fully died yet. He just went into, I think it was cardiac arrest or something, because then they were like, we're losing him, and they're all like trying to, like try to bring him back.
Right.
Like pumping IVs, like getting their clear stuff ready. But he was able to, before he passed out, to at the very least have just a few words left with his son, telling his son that he needs to go home, he needs to go be with his family. And like, no matter what it takes, and something that Ford took with him, because it's like, and he got to at least mend his relationship with his son, because granted, sure, it was at the very end of his life, but still, at the very least, their relationship was prepared.
They got to spend that time together, like when they were going into the no-go zone.
Yeah.
It's like when they went in together and they found out the conspiracy together. And in a way, they kind of were able to bond during that time. And at the end, he was able to reconcile things with his son that he had screwed up his relationship with for 15 years. And he got to have the satisfaction of he got to be respected more by his son in the end of his life, and then he got to find out what happened to the woman that he loved.
Yeah.
So his character arc was complete by that time.
Well, and then the other thing is, like how I said with Barb, like the coma test. Honestly, I don't see at that point what else you could do with Joe's character. Bryan Cranston's an amazing character, but he's just a scientist at the end of the day.
Well, and even then, it's like we have Graham and Serizawa.
Both of them there to fulfill the exposition roles. He would have just kind of awkwardly been standing there in the corner, like not really been able to contribute. And people have been like, well, he could have done this, he could have done that. He couldn't have been there in the action the same way that his son could, because his son is military.
Right.
And honestly, it's a miracle his son survived. Like, his son, has barely survived so many situations, barely by the skin of his teeth. He, came through so many close calls.
Yeah, and even at the end, he was almost killed by the Muto, only for Godzilla.
Yeah, literally, it's only pure luck half the time. Now, granted, some of it is he happened to, survive long enough to get himself at the right moment, at the right place to where he could survive because he uses military training. But there's other parts of it where, yeah, honestly, Ford was really lucky. Like any other situation, he'd be axed off like all the other military guys. And
really, Joe would have been standing on the sidelines. It's again...
he wouldn't have been able to contribute much. He served a purpose, and he fulfilled the purpose. And sometimes it's okay to kill a character off if they fulfilled their purpose. Now, granted, mind you, not always. Sometimes it's well, why can't they just have their little happily ever after? I understand, mind you. But if in the story, if it's there's nothing they could do, now some people could say you could put him in a coma and then he wakes up by the end of the movie. Well, fair enough. But again...
It functionally wouldn't even make much of a difference because would he be in the Godzilla sequel? No.
No, because if Ford and them, they're done. Because now they're going to focus on new characters other than Serizawa and Dr. Graham.
So, I mean, really, it's while it is sad, it's at least...
It still functions fine.
Yeah, and at least Ford got to be there for his father in his dying moments.
Well, and even then, if it's in a coma, he still wouldn't have been able to serve anything in the plot. See, that's the thing. That's kind of where the coma test is kind of funny. Whether he's unconscious or dead, really, that's the only way he can serve as the plot at that point, because he met his criteria.
He fulfilled it, and again, like you said,
and then you have to kind of put him to the side because there's not really much you can do with this character. Would have been nice if he got to reunite with his grandson. Sure. And his son. That would have been nice. But sometimes it's okay to have Shakespearean tragedies in your story.
And again, the 2014 Godzilla movie is really good. So even if you are a little upset at that death and how it was handled, I mean, in terms of the context, you still have a great story that's not really marred by the death of a character who had already...
And Bryan Cranston's acting was amazing still.
Right, and I think that's another thing, is like when you have that great acting, it really sells it.
Well, and I remember whenever I took him to see it, because of... I'm kind of there with you, Anand. 80% of the time, I will agree with him on character death. There's a couple of character deaths where we have had our disagreements on. Not anything really major. Usually it's where I'm apathetic to it.
And I'm like, I hate this, it's stupid.
And I'm like, but those are very small. And I was like, but that was one where I saw the movie and I was a little worried because I know some people online had complained about that. And I really love this movie. I loved it. So I was worried, and I'm like, oh, I hope this isn't a thing where he's gonna hate and I love it, and then it's gonna be awkward because I took him to movies. And and when that moment came, I just turned it. I didn't even watch the screen. I just kept watching him the whole time. And then I remember casually whispered to you, and I was just like, so how do you feel about this? And you're just like, I'm good. And I'm just like, oh, we're good. It's just like,
it's Tim approved.
I'm just like, we're good. And I was like, and I could go on. I'm just like, whoo, that hurl's over.
Well, I know a lot of people do use me that if I approve of something, if I think it's good, then I'm always so critical on stuff that a lot of friends have used me as a test, a litmus test of,
Well, yeah. I mean, I can be picky, but I know he's a little pickier. But that's meaner. I have standards. He has higher standards.
Yeah.
That sounds more adult.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought it was well handled, and I mean, sure, it's like, are there things they could have done? Well, yeah, but I don't even think it's worth even really getting mad over, because this is a time when you can go read fanfics where everyone lives.
Yeah.
And it's like,
to contrast this, a movie about giant, ferocious, fire-breathing creatures where midway through the movie the father dies. Stoic the Vast, everybody. I'll let you take this one. Now this is one where I didn't hate as much as he did, but I do agree with him. I came to a realization. I realized what they were trying to do, and this will help set up for his rant.
okay.
They were really trying to get that Lion King effect, and it feels like they missed the mark. Go.
Okay, so I really love How to Train Your Dragon, the first movie. I love it. I think it's one of DreamWorks' best movies. I own the movie. Like, I don't even buy a lot of movies. I love that movie.
It was fantastic.
And it's like, because I remember when a friend first brought me to see it, like, it was actually, it was years after it came out and they got it on DVD, and they put it on, and I was just like, oh, I'll see it, and then I was just like, I fell in love with it. I love the characters, I love the growth, and I love the whole story.
And then there was the TV series, and you really got into it.
I actually got into the series. I watched that for several seasons.
And it had Mark Hamill as one of the villains. It was great.
Yeah, a friend of mine, when Mark Hamill came in as
Alvin
the Terrible.
Alvin the Outcast.
Yeah. It says when Alvin came in, I had a friend who I was watching with at the time, and she's like,
is that Mark Hamill with a Scottish accent?
Well, and she was like, Mark Hamill's coming in, and he's bringing the plot with him. But it's no understatement to say that I was freaking excited for How to Train Your Dragon 2. The sequel to a movie that I loved, and after all that build-up in the show, I was excited to see some stuff.
I saw it first, and I remember you said, how was it? And I said, it was mostly good. I don't know how you'll think of it, though.
Yeah.
I'm like,
you were really vague. So I went and saw it in theaters, and I actually went and saw it with my mom, and as I was watching the movie, and there were some good parts, and like especially some of the stuff from the trailers where you have
Stoic. This freaking spoiled the biggest plot twist.
Oh yeah! By the way, Hiccup's mother is alive, and it's
like trailers.
Yeah, but it's like you have some great moments, like Stoic being supportive, calling Astrid his future daughter-in-law, and it's like, and it was great. And then you see Hiccup having evolved his engineering skills, where he has like a flame sword, he has new technology he's built, and he's been able to.
And he can fly with.
Yeah, he's got the wingsuit, and it's like, and you see that since the first movie, he's able to really come into his own. I'm like, there was some stuff, and I was starting watching the movie, I'm like, this is awesome. And what's really funny is that I actually...
And when Stoic reunited with Volca.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
That was a fantastic scene. The context doesn't make much sense because it really makes Volca look terrible when she's just like, by the way,
Volca,
I abandoned you for 20 years.
Volca wasn't handled that well, but the scene in isolation is really well done.
Because you think Stokes is gonna be mad, but then he goes and he puts his hand up and he's like,
so gently,
you're just as beautiful as the day I lost you.
And I'm just like, be still my heart.
And it's
Gerard Butler.
Yeah, and they did that little dance, little Viking song, and I'm like, man, this is great. And I'm like,
but of course, it's setting up for look, the lovers are reunited, only to tragically separate them.
I mean, I honestly thought they were going to kill off Hiccup's mom, because that's always what happens. Look, this long-lost...
Stuff the mummy in the fridge.
Yeah. But then there were stupid things that were happening in the movie. I noticed Drago was such a bland villain.
He's not a very good
Well, and what's really funny is that when I first saw the trailers and they only showed a quick glimpse of Drago, I thought it was Alvin with his hair like more down. Because I'm like,
it's a shame because Alvin's actually a good villain.
Well, and I thought, okay, it'd be cool if they brought in Alvin as the movie villain because he was always a consistent villain in the show.
Plus, you can't go wrong with more Mark Hamill.
Right, and I thought maybe they could bring in more like Dagger the Deranged, and then maybe they could have Thornado come in, and then Thornado...
That's because the TV series had some of the same writers as the first movie.
Right, and it's like... And then the second movie, they were like, hey, what if we take everything that they were doing and throw it all out?
That's because they had a couple of different writers.
Yeah, and it was like... And it basically, all the build-up from the show, gone. All the build-up from the first movie, gone. The second movie is like... It feels like The Last Jedi kind of here, let's just ignore all the build-up.
They were really... hard to hammer in the whole Lion King, like the father dies, so then the son has to take up the father's mantle.
But yeah, here's the thing: when it came, I was kind of getting annoyed at the movie, but I wasn't.
See, but Lion King is very Shakespearean.
Yeah.
How to Train Your Dragon 2 is not really Shakespearean.
No.
I don't even hate it. I'm kind of in the dislike? I wouldn't even say apathetic. I do dislike it, kind of.
When you get to the way that they handled Stoic's death, one of the things that really annoyed me in the movie was how Stoic wanted Hiccup to become chief. Like, he's pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. I'm like, whoa.
After the resolution of the first movie of don't force stuff on my son.
Right, because that was his whole character arc in the first movie.
And now the movie's telling Hiccup, no, you have to do this.
Yeah, and it's like, because the whole thing about him and his relationship with Hiccup in the first movie was that, okay, he's different, but I want him to be a Viking. I want him to become a traditional Viking.
Only to accept that, you know what, Hiccup is not a traditional Viking.
And he came to respect...
He doesn't hate dragons.
Well, and there was even a great episode in the show where you had Hiccup and Stoic sort of bond, and they were looking back at all this history of the previous Viking chiefs and of Burke and their sons, only to find out that there were some other chiefs that had sons that weren't great Vikings. Some of them were kind of skinny. Some of them didn't do much, but they were kind of like scrubbed in history to make them look like they were all great. And so it was more of a thing of, you're not the only person who went through this Hiccup. And I was really glad to see that, because they would acknowledge that. And then you get to the second movie, and it's like Stoic's character completely forgot everything. And it's like, okay, why? But then and I realized why they were doing that when they killed him off. And they killed him off in such a stupid way.
Such a cheap heroic sacrifice.
And the whole thing with the alphas, it's like, it went from like, they kind of influenced the dragons with like sounds and stuff, to literal mind control.
Like, I get it whenever you're taking from the form of the Red Death from the first movie. Like, I get it. There's a little bit of precedence here. But this kind of took it to a completely new level. Where I'm like, wait, mind control?
Well, and it leaves so many plot holes, and then then they control Hiccup, and then Hiccup's gonna shoot they control Toothless, and they're gonna have Toothless shoot Hiccup, and then Stoic does the stupid
only for then suddenly Toothless to come back, and then Hiccup to yell at Toothless in a moment of emotional frustration. And then that pushes Toothless away, so then he can be easily more manipulated until the final act. And I'm like, this is a bit contrived.
Yeah, and
very cliche, like not the good cliche.
Yeah, and when you're pulling these heroic sacrifices, there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. And this was the worst way to do it, because, okay, you have Stoic, this tough, super awesome Viking character.
Well, I mean, there's more you can do as Stoic.
Yeah, there's so much you can do with him, but the way they did it,
it's not like he's like done. There's sure he's a minor character, but there's so much stuff. Like the TV show found stuff to do with him, even though he's not part of the main little circle of kids.
Yeah.
Like there's stuff you can do as Stoic. Like, and the reunion with his wife, like that has potential of, well, they've been separated for years. Like how do they reconcile that, and how do they learn to be in each other's lives again despite being apart for like so long, and having to live different lives, learning to there's stuff you can do with that.
Yeah. And then it's gone. And when the character sacrifices themselves, I generally, like, I would say 80% of the time, I hate when a character jumps in front of another to die to save them. Because especially when, they actually could manage to grab both and then move out of the way.
Like, there are some circumstances, mind you, like, where you understand it. Like, Yu Hakusho, when the very first episode, Yusuke runs ahead to shove, and the car comes swerving in, and he pushes the kid, so that way the car doesn't hit him.
And it hits him instead, and
he's just running fast, adrenaline, just, and then a very, very quick moment. Like, just diving forward to push the kid out of the way. There wouldn't have been a way where he could grab the kid and pull him away. Like, that car was, like...
He barely got the kid out in the first place.
Like, barely. Like, that kid just barely got, a couple scratches. That kid barely, got out of there fine. Like, it's, moments, it's okay to have some moments where a character, is... jumping in front of somebody or something like that. Like, you can have moments like that, but it's in a situation...
It's so contrived.
We're not a situation where they can easily grab a character and both get out fine.
Well, and what really makes this worse is
make it a split-second moment.
Right.
Where it's like that character could have died. Boom! That character somehow got there very quickly.
Right. And Stoic has always been a super tough character, so one blast from Hiccup. Like, they treat the fact that he's a Night Fury, a Night Fury blast. Okay, but Stoic's been killing dragons his entire life. You're telling me that a single blast was enough to completely kill him dead?
You think that he hasn't been hit by a dragon before?
Well, and it was
this guy who, as we see in the first movie, is literally roundhouse going at it from a giant, whatever that one dragon breed's called. I can't remember.
I don't remember the dragon breed.
But it's the one that Snatlout rides, that kind of breed.
Oh, the
one that has the melty type of...
Oh, yeah.
The thing.
Well, yeah, it's and what I was expecting is that when he got shot, and then...
you could have injured him.
Well, yeah, and I was expecting that when Hiccup goes to him and he'd be like, Dad, what's going on? Then Stoic would be like, you think that's enough to kill Stoic the Vast? And he gets back up. Maybe injured, he couldn't quite walk properly.
I mean, heck, you could have even had something that could mirror the first movie, like he lost a limb.
Yeah, what if he lost his arm, like he was grabbing Hiccup and boom, it blew his arm off? It's like, okay, yeah.
Like stakes. There are ways to have stakes.
Right, because you think that Hiccup dies in the first movie, only to find out...
off Lion King.
Yeah.
Because unless you understand why Lion King worked.
Right. And here's the thing, is that it doesn't make sense that they would want, even as a writer's perspective, that you would want to kill off Stoic so that you would force Hiccup to become the chief. Hiccup's 20 years old. They don't understand that. He's 20 years old. It's not ready to be chief. It's not like Simba, because Simba spent a lot of years ignoring his duties.
Plus Scar was kind of destroying the land. They needed a new king. They needed this, and it was Simba's birthright, and it's just you have to set this right. No one else can. You are the heir. You have to dethrone your uncle. Also, we're kind of Hamlet with lions.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense in that context, but with How to Train Your Dragon 2, it's okay, Stoic's not...
You are not Hamlet with dragons. I'm sorry, you're not.
Well, it's Stoic wasn't exactly slowing down. You could see he's got a few grays in his hair, but, he was still...
He could still wrestle a Night Fury with his bare hands.
Yeah, so, I mean, Hiccup was doing a lot of good on his own. He was charting all the islands, he was figuring out where all these other dragons were.
Well, as you said, when they get married, why not have Astrid be chief? And Hiccup just continues, charting more lands.
Right. They would work well together, and Astrid is very much...
He could probably create some nice, good trade routes for their people.
Well, yeah, it's they can work together. Astrid could handle the basic chief duties, while Hiccup could handle all of the extra stuff. Because you see, even in the show, he deals with a lot of these other villains that have come in, and you can see him, learning how to deal with this. And it's they can work together, and since Stoic already knows, he knows that Hiccup and Astrid are going to eventually get married.
Oh, they totally are.
But it's like, you could have them to get together and then have them work together to really kind of drive home the Burke has become accepting of this, in that, okay, they can work together to be...
Plus, Stoic would happily hand the reins to Astrid.
Yeah.
He loves Astrid.
Well, and also, he would respect when Hiccup is ready to take up any kind of mantle like that. Hiccup is doing his own thing. It's not like he's running away. He's got so many other things he wants to do.
It's not like he's leaving Burke forever. He just wants to keep charting more land, learning new things, discovering, because he learned so much.
He's like a scientist, really. Or an engineer.
Yeah, like the closest thing that they have, but with dragons.
Yeah, so...
a researcher.
Yeah, and he's doing so much good. So why would you want to force him into a different role?
Why would you force him into an area where he has to stay put?
Right, because, okay, if he was like 25, maybe getting closer to 30, okay, maybe I can understand them passing the reins around that time, because Stoic would probably be in his 50s, 60s. So
and then Hiccup will probably have a kid right around then.
Right, so then Hiccup would be more ready for it. But why would you force Hiccup into this? And wouldn't it be so much more satisfying that Stoic officially hands the reins over to Hiccup, when he's ready?
Well, yeah, until it's not, this is not something I'm forcing on you, because that's kind of the lesson that he learned in the first movie.
Yeah, and it's like they killed him off. They killed him off in a stupid contrived way, in a whole stupid contrived sequence, to fulfill a plot point that didn't even need to happen.
Because you're trying to be Lion King.
It's like, it was insulting, and I was pissed when I was watching that movie.
I remember that one. It's like whenever I was ranting him with Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. I got so much Snapchats that day.
Well, and I remember I was like, I balled my fist, and I had hit the little armrest in the theater. I was pissed. I was like, I wanted to scream, but I was just like, and I was like so angry about it. And it ruined How to Train Your Dragon for me, because after that I stopped watching the show. I stopped watching any of the shows. I refused to see How to Train Your Dragon.
Which is funny, because of all the shows at least for as far as I know, still take place before the second movie. It's like even the show writers don't want to touch what happens in the aftermath.
They've had to.
Because what do you do? And even with the third movie, I'm like, but what do you do? Everything felt so finalized in the second movie. It didn't feel like you could go anywhere else.
Yeah, it felt like they were limiting everything in the second movie, because now everything in the show, all the shows had to tie into that.
I felt so sorry for the show writers too.
Well, it's like, yeah, you can.
Because they had to keep changing things because of the second movie. And they're trying to make their own story while trying to make it connect to the second movie, and I'm like, you poor souls.
Yeah, it's like where they had to get rid of Thornado.
Yeah, like, they had their choice.
It's like, yeah, because, here's Bone Crusher.
Because no one told them. Because they're like, here's this dragon. Oh, we introduced a new dragon for Stoic. And then they were just like, I'm sure the TV show writers were like...
Well, we had an entire episode where he tames Thornado. And it's like, and it's a new type of dragon. And I'm like, okay, no, now we have Bone Crusher. Oh, yeah. And then they had Bone Crusher, and they gave him to that guy who tried to kill him before. There are so many...
That's another...
I have an entire topic where I complained about How to Train Your Dragon too.
Next one. Since we have a good dad versus a bad dad. Yeah. I think that's a good comparison. Right.
Dragon Ball.
This is a funny thing to talk about.
I literally, in my list of characters, I literally just have Dragon Ball.
Not characters, just Dragon Ball. Like, just the series.
Because the series has always handled death rather well.
Now, I know what you people are thinking. The series where death is meaningless because of, you can keep resurrecting people. Well, yes. Because I think as silly and ridiculous as Dragon Ball could get and Dragon Ball Z could get, it understood that there has to be rules. Even with the death reverser the Dragon Balls are, magical little amazing MacGuffins, there still needed to be limits on them. Like the Earth Dragon Ball, you could do something even amazing and say, resurrect all the people that were killed by Cell. And the Earth Dragon Ball could do it. But here's the thing, it can only resurrect people one time. That's it. If people die again, it couldn't do it. That was the whole point of, like, in the
Namek Saga.
Well, in the Saiyan Saga, I think they even mentioned, they said, Chaozu, don't sacrifice your life because you were already wished back by the Dragon Balls. We can't do it again. And Chaozu still gave his life, so that made his death meaningless. Now, granted, mind you, people are like, oh, well, yeah, but we know later on. But see, that's the thing. When you were watching the show in the moment, that was what made Dragon Ball so great, is you didn't know at the time. You didn't know that things will change. But even then, because things change, the stakes had to keep getting higher, and they kept getting higher to the point where it's honestly almost ridiculous of a meme that how ridiculous the stakes keep getting.
Well, and also,
well, it's a shonen.
Yeah. Well, and also, I know resurrection is something that can be kind of a contentious topic to talk about. And there are good ways to handle it and bad ways to handle it. And what Dragon Ball does is resurrection is part of the lore. The Dragon Balls can resurrect people. Like, even though that was kind of a new thing when they were first doing it,
Yeah.
it's like, okay.
But again, limits.
Yes. There are rules to this, and there are things that can keep the Dragon Balls not just from doing it, but they can stop working altogether. If the Guardian that makes them dies, boom, Dragon Balls are gone. You can't use them.
Well, I mean, if the dragon dies, you got to get a Guardian to make a new one, but that can take time.
Right. That's when they had to
If the entire planet Earth goes kaboom.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like
Hello, Majin Buu.
Yeah. Well, and it was like when you were when you see that Piccolo dies. It's like
That's a serious thing, because, like, Kami died, and then it's like, because of way back in Dragon Ball itself, not Dragon Ball Z, when the dragon was destroyed, you thought, oh no, we'll never be able to resurrect Krillin and Chaozu and Master Roshi now, because the dragon's gone. And then you meet Kami, and then it's like, we can make a new dragon, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like, they actually can be saved, and the relief you had way back early on then. But still, was like, you had that fear.
Yeah.
And then when Piccolo dies, that makes it even almost more permanent. And then they found out about the Namekian Dragon Balls. So, okay, so then they traveled to Namek, only to find out that stakes got even more higher. But even the Namekian Dragon Balls have limits. Now, people are like, oh, but they can resurrect people multiple times. Like, you could keep dying and the Namekian Dragon Balls can keep reviving you. Yes, but here's the thing. Unlike the Earth Dragon Balls, where you could say, revive all the people that have been killed by Frieza. Boom, billions of people could be revived. With the Namekian Dragon Balls, they can't do that. You can only revive one person per wish. And you can only get 3 wishes. So they had to start getting smarter with their dragon wishes.
right, and they had to figure out how to do it. And those limits.
And they had to start learning how to kind of play the system. But even then, there were still limits, and the stakes still kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right, and even then, there are so many things that you have to do. You have to collect all of the Dragon Balls, even just to make the wishes in the first place. And with the Namek Saga, when they were trying to go to Namek to use those Dragon Balls, they were in competition with Frieza and
like stakes. You gotta keep raising the stakes.
And with
So if the heroes fail, you can't bring those people back ever. And that was like one of the biggest fears of the whole Majin Buu thing, because the entirety of Earth's population, besides Hercule, kaboom!
Right, and that's why when Goku was trying to pick certain people, he only picked a couple of people to grab that he could, and it's like
because it was a spur of the moment.
Right, and it's like
but stakes were never higher, because if they didn't destroy Majin Buu, not only would those deaths be permanent, but Majin Buu found a way to teleport to the land of the dead, meaning that he could destroy those people all over again. And if the dead are destroyed, they cease to exist. There is no more afterlife for you. Like, you gotta keep raising the stakes whenever it comes to... In a series with a magical MacGuffin that can bring people back to life, you have to keep raising the stakes.
Well,
otherwise, there is no investment.
Well, and even then, they can't just use the Dragon Balls to wish away the bad guy. So if the bad guy wins, and he just kills everyone, like with Cell, if he had killed everyone, and even all the other villains after that, especially when you get to, like, Super, if you have these villains come in and just kill everyone, there'd be no one left to wish people back. So they still have to defeat the villain. And usually it's the Dragon Balls, okay, after everything's done, then we can wish everyone back. But they have to get to that point first.
And it's not like they come out of it easy.
No.
There are many, many bumps and bruises and broken limbs.
Right. So, I mean, and that's why I really think that a lot of the deaths are generally handled well. Especially in, when you...
Especially when they make you think that for a time it could be permanent. Now, granted, mind you, it makes you realize that, oh, there is ways around this, that those things happen. But sometimes, like with Goku in the Buu Saga, it's not always a Dragon Ball. It's like, but it's always interesting, but it makes you realize that there's a chance that some deaths could be permanent.
Yeah, and it doesn't actually do that, because Goku still comes back in the Buu Saga permanently.
But it presents you with the opportunity that could happen.
Well, and even when Vegeta sacrifices himself in the Buu Saga to try to kill Buu, and even though he fails, he dies, and it's only by the grace of the Kais that he's allowed to come back, because they need everyone they can to fight Majin Buu.
And it just, like, the stakes get crazier and crazier and crazier. That's how this works. And, like, just...
The series escalation.
And just to see... And Dragon Ball Z was not afraid to just show innocent people getting murdered.
Oh, especially, like, with Cell, when he was going around just...
Oh, God. That was, like, a straight-up horror movie with Imperfect Cell. Like, just draining the life, literally turning them into husks until there's, like, nothing. But, like, literally piles of clothes. Like, it is... Ooh, like, ugh. It is both gross and horrifying, and and so it knows how to set up stakes, and people who want to make fun of it all you want.
It's meme-worthy.
But there is a reason every shonen on the planet tries to rip off Dragon Ball. It's because it is the granddaddy king.
Yeah, it's still the king of shonen, even decades after it ended.
It cannot be toppled. It is. It's iconic. And it's iconic for a reason, because it knew to keep raising the stakes, but to also set limits.
Right.
And as ridiculous as overpowered thinking get Dragon Ball, even those things still have limits.
And it's really funny that Akira Toriyama would feel sometimes insecure about his writing abilities.
Mostly with romance.
Yeah, mostly with romance, but, like, he still told great stories flying by the seat of his pants for 10 years straight. And it's amazing that, I think it's very rare ability that he actually had... You know,
and it's a fun story to get invested in.
Yeah, and it's not like, okay, we're just going to be killing off these characters. Oh.
And yes, it is, and people are like, well, it's an anime. It is meant mostly for children. It is targeted for, like, the young adolescents and stuff like that.
But you can still enjoy it.
It's still fun. It's enjoyable.
Well, because you introduced it to me just a couple years ago.
I grew up with it. He did not.
And I still enjoyed. I mean, we watched Dragon Ball Z, and I watched Dragon Ball Super.
It's a really fun trip to really get into it. Like, it's just fun.
It doesn't feel like it's treating you like a kid, though. I think that's one of the reasons why it's endured so much.
I think it's because of Toriyama has, like, he has the heart of the child, but the mind of a writer who flies by the seat of his pants. But he, like, he wants to tell a story, but in his heart, he has the heart of a child. So it has all the fun of a child, and even some of the innocent mindset of a child. Like, like the heroes will win, the bad guys will lose. Like, yeah, cliche, but it's told in a way.
Enjoyable.
But it's told in a way where you can, like, where it's like a ride, and you are just along for that ride, and it's a fun ride. And who doesn't love rides? Like, that's kind of what rides are for, entertainment, and it's enjoyable.
And it focused on being entertaining, not trying to be, oh, look how dark we can get.
I mean, stakes were raised, but Dragon Ball never forgot that it is entertainment.
It is a series. It is shonen, pure and simple, and it defined the genre.
It did define the genre. Like, the genre was forever changed by Dragon Ball. Like, and sure, there was other big stories that came before Dragon Ball. That is true, and that will always be true. But you can ask any shonen mangaka on the planet, and 80% of them will tell you that at least parts of their story were influenced by Akira Toriyama.
Yeah.
So many of them practically are his biggest fanboys. And how they write, some of them miss the mark, but you can tell they want to capture that same fun, that same stakes. Because if a lot of them will try to keep raising their stakes even crazier and crazier and crazier, to where it's just really ridiculous. But it's because they want that same investment, that fun, that stakes, that...
You look at characters like Luffy and Naruto, it's very clear that they're trying to channel that Goku element to the...
That childlike fun hero character that has all this optimism, but also this fierce determination to keep facing the odds, no matter what, even if death is on the line.
Yeah.
Even if death happens.
Yeah, and, and it's so funny because despite it being silly so much, it handles death very well most of the time.
The scenes are very well handled, both in the manga and in the anime, like from both Japanese and English, and how it's acted. It's honestly, what more can you say from an adolescent entertainment?
Yeah.
It's it does its job well.
And there's a reason why Dragon Ball has still endured as one of the most popular franchises ever to this day.
To this day, people are like, why won't it die? Because it's like Power Rangers, it will never die. It's a cash cow. And it's a cash cow for a reason. All right, and
that's the end of the good list.
Oh, darn!
So,
I want to talk about positive things, but alas.
Okay, so there's an anime called Code Geass.
Oh